So this is Get Into the Groove, where I'm going to be talking a little bit from moving from individual workflow to collaborative workflow. And this can be whether or not you've been freelance, moving to agency, or maybe you're looking into collaborating with Drupal because it's a lot of the same sort of concepts. So housekeeping, I'm an accessibility person. So I'd like to tell you that the images in this slide deck are mostly decorative, and if they have any meaning, I'll explain them. Abide by the code of conduct for DrupalCon. You can find that on their website. And then because I am an accessibility person and I like to show people this, I am going to turn captions on, and I do that with this little thing up here, and I go to caption preferences, and if I can navigate over, I usually do text size large, and I put the text position at the top, and then I toggle them on, and now we have captions, which is not being picked up, but maybe it will in a moment, or maybe not. Okay, well, if they do happen to get picked up, now they are considered open captions, and open captions, what makes them different is you cannot turn them on and off. And that's one of the reasons I put them on the top. So when they put captions at the bottom, they don't interlap with each other. What is that thing that's on?
Wi-Fi disconnected.
Okay. My name is AmyJune Hineline, Volkswagenchick on Drupal.org. I work at the Linux Foundation. I'm their certification community architect, which means I help maintain our portfolio of certifications and exams. But I'm also a member of the community working group, working on the code of conduct and making sure that everyone feels psychologically safe at events. And there's a QR code at the bottom that links to a slide deck because I do have links at the end that are pretty helpful, because some of these I just sort of glance past. So the agenda today, we'll talk about freelance versus agency. Again, this can be applied to contribution. We'll look at version control. We'll look at Get, and I'll talk about why we're only looking at Get. And we'll look at some of the basic commands. This is a basic talk, so we're not going to go into things like cherry picking and stashing, but we'll look at those at the basic commands. We'll take a look at Get clients, for people who may have a little trepidation working on the command line. But why I like to look at Get clients, I kind of do it in juxtaposition. I will show the command and then we'll look at it in the interface, because I want people to understand what that interface is doing, and that's why we look at it the command line as well. And then we'll kind of talk a little bit about local environments, because we all work in Drupal. So there is some singing. Get into the groove, Dev. You've got to prove your code to me. So if that was too painful, I do invite people that they can leave or I can step out, but there is a little bit of this going on, and I can do it. Okay. So let's talk about moving from freelance to agency workflow, or, vice versa. Moving to agency from freelance has its advantage. What do we love about freelance or doing it on our own? We work on our own time, at any time. We work on our own schedule. That's really spectacular. We get to choose our projects. Sometimes when you're working at an agency, you do have the privilege of picking and choosing projects, but for the most part, you're kind of stuck with what they give you. When we work with other people, we gain diverse experience we might not seek out on our own. We work across industries and technologies. And again, that flexible location, after the pandemic, less of us travel onto campus, but, before some of us had to go into the office or do the co-working spaces. And when we're on our own, it's really, going and traveling, working from home, doing it from a cafe, doing it from a caravan. Working on your own, you can control your income, you can set your rates, you can grow your earnings. There's a better work balance most of the time when you're freelance. And then you also have this creative freedom that you don't always get when you work at an agency. You get to experiment without those rigid constraints. But freelance freedom can feel a lot like the wild, wild west. no teammates to brainstorm with, no one to review your code, and a lot of having no accountability because you're doing it all on yourself. You know what you must do to get the job done, and you're kind of riding solo through that uncharted territory. And as a freelancer, you're doing all of the things. You're juggling all of the roles. You're the project manager, you're the developer, you're the QA, you are doing UX and design, and you're also reviewing your own code. Does anyone think that's a good idea? So every decision, every task, every detail is on your own shoulders, and you're fully responsible for the outcome. And then many of the advantages that freelance work had historically has been encompassed in agency life or working for a consultancy with that onset of the pandemic, like I mentioned. More companies are moving to more remote friendly, more inclusive time zones. I'm gonna see if I can get that thing off. It did? Oh, good. Okay. Okay. So teamwork is kind of spectacular because it offers a diversity of thought and creativity. That team environment allows everyone to brainstorm together. We're sitting in a room, we're looking at each other, we're going back to our desks, metaphorically, and coming back, a little bit later at stand-up. So it really increases problem solving, and we arrive at solutions a little bit more efficiently and a little bit more effectively when we're on a team. It also allows the initiative to innovate. This is why we work together on initiative teams, sharing different opinions, different lived experiences, strengthens our accountability, and it helps make our decisions faster than when we do it alone. And working in that full-time web development role at an established company, sometimes we don't experience this in a smaller company, but sometimes they give you that opportunity for structured learning. You get education hours, you get sent to camps, and plus you have everyday exposure to mentors, to experts, and best practices that you don't always get as a freelancer. And again, on your own, you wear every hat. This is sort of a diagram of what it looks like, workflow management. On a team, your roles and roles and skill levels add that accountability. We work with juniors, we work with seniors, we live with different diverse experiences. We work with different diverse experiences. So project managers usually kind of assign tasks and bridge the communication between the devs and the stakeholders. And they help translate that jargon that we all kind of talk in, and they clarify needs. Tickets are submitted, they're assigned. Developers and designers work on tasks. They collaborate to improve and generate new ideas. Technical leads are kind of at the end where they help, solve conflicts. Maybe they're doing your merge requests. And then after changes are made, we have the QA and the tester, and regression tests are performed. The PM decides what changes are made, rinse and repeat, and that makes the teamwork easier. Okay, so now kind of talking about working locally. This means on your machine, not in the browser or in the cloud, but the first step is having some sort of version control. There's a couple of you that missed the part where you could leave if you wanted to, so sorry. We'll get there, you'll see why I say that. So code workflow management becomes kind of a big deal. Version control is a system of records that changes to a file or a set of files over time, so you can recall specific versions later. I do this locally with my own files, if anyone knows about Get, because from 2 weeks from now, my to-do list, if I have it stashed in Get, I can go back and look at it from 2 weeks ago. So not only does it work in like collaborative workflow, but it works in your own workflow as well. So what is version control? And I stole this right off of Atlassian. Version control software keeps track of every modification to the code in a special kind of database. It manages your code over time. If mistakes are made, or when mistakes are made, right? Developers and project managers can roll back to previous versions, minimizing that downtime. So what are the prerequisites for implementing version control. First step, you install Git locally. That means setting it up on your computer. You want to make sure that's installed locally and globally on your machine. So not only on the project that you're working with in this, but outside of that and in the bigger bubble. And even if your workstation is already equipped with Git, for example, sometimes it's in DevTools, it's a good idea to update to the latest version. And you can do that using a package manager or an official installer. You can download the source code yourself, compiling it yourself if you're comfortable with that. There's things like Homebrew or Packagist. You should have some basic knowledge of the command line. I do talk about Git clients where you don't have to have that. But if you're a beginner, a Git client can be used, but you should be acquainted with the basic command knowledge that's going on behind the scenes. It really helps just to understand the workflow. Git clients, they are GUIs, graphical user interfaces for the command line. I want to introduce this because in the next few slides I have some images that I reference after I show the command. So I'll be showing the command line and then I'll be showing what it looks like in that graphical user interface. The client specifies, it simplifies because it has a dashboard, it has buttons and drop downs and windows and interfaces to the workflows. So here's a screenshot of a Git client that's open. You can see the visual, you can see where there's some commits, your list of files on the side. You can see a diff down here. There's some buttons up there. Like I said, think of it as sort of a dashboard. And there are all types of Git clients available. Some are free, some are not. Some have free versions and limited access. Some are open source, others are not. I don't have one that I recommend specifically, but I do encourage people to use open source software. Some of the free versions or the open source versions, you need to look into this if you work outside of public sectors, but some of them only allow you to work on public repositories like Drupal.org, so if you have the free version, you can't do client work with them. So do your homework. Sometimes agencies have shared licenses because they want everyone to use the same Git client, so if you have a problem, your project manager kind of knows how to help you. And many developers use IDEs. These are integrated development environments to manage their workflows. They're a little bit beyond having a regular text editor. Sometimes the Git client will be integrated inside the IDE itself. It'll have a command line interface. Like Git clients, some are free, some offer free offers or free trials. Again, check with the agency that you work with about which one works best for everyone. And then, some of us don't always have the privilege of having a Super Duty machine. So make sure your machine can handle running an IDE in a spreadsheet at the same time. Sometimes some of these heavy applications don't play well with the IDEs. So now getting into the basics of Git. So why Git and not Subversion or some other tool? Because Git, are there any WordPress developers here? Okay, good. So most modern CMSs work with Git. There are some antiquated, well, not antiquated, WordPress isn't antiquated, but they use antiquated workflows and work with Subversion. But Git really has become the industry standard for web development. It has a rich set of commands for tracking, for cloning, for workflows. So I like to talk about a little bit of the difference between SVN and Git, because maybe some of us are old enough that we did use Subversion before. SVN is centralized, so it's like a single repository and networks required. It's simpler but less flexible, where Git is decentralized, so you're working like, you can work in your repo locally, you can work offline. It has fast branching and merging. It has way more control. So the difference is SVN is centralized where Git is distributed. And then to make a song reference, think of it that SVN, everyone wants to rule the world, where Git is girls just want to have fun, where everyone works independently. Okay, so here comes some more 80s song references. Are you ready? forgive me. Never gonna get you up, never gonna pull you down, never gonna run around and revert you. Okay, so there's a list of commands here. This is a basic get talk, so I don't go into like some major things, but these are sort of the ones that within 6 months of doing command line, doing development, these are the ones that you're going to see the most. Get status, this or get init, that starts your repository. Get status is my absolute favorite command because I always forget. Get status tells you where you are. It tells you kind of like what needs to be done before you run a separate command. Did I forget to do something? So get status is something I do all the time. Get branch, that lists all your branch locally in your current repository. And it also has like a visual indicator of what branch that you're on. Like it's either an arrow or maybe it's a color difference. Get diff, it shows you the file differences when they're not staged. Yeah, when you haven't staged them yet. Get log, this shows the list of the version history for the current branch. Get push sends the committed changes that you've made. And I'm going to talk about these in workflow, so don't worry too much about it right now. But get push sends those committed changes. If you're working with another set of developers, it pushes it to the master, or the not master branch, the main branch. Get pull fetches and merges your stuff. Get add is a local command that adds the files that you're working on into the repository so you can push it. Get commit takes that snapshot, makes it apparent where you are in your workflow. Get merge merges, a couple different things depending on the flags you use, but usually it merges your stuff into the specified branch that you're working on. So if you're on the feature branch, it'll save your changes to the feature branch. Get pull, push, and clone all work with the remote. Most everything else is local and can be used even if you don't have the internet. So pull, push, and clone usually are with your remote. So when working with Get, most of your day-to-day workflow happens locally on your machine. You're saving those snapshots and saving your history. So here are the 3 key commands to remember. Get clone, that makes a working copy of the repository. It sets you up to make your changes locally, so you're going to clone something down onto your machine. Get remote connects your local repository with that remote server so you can push your changes. Useful if you've initialized the repository local. And then get pull is kind of a combination of commands. It fetches and then merges from your remote repository. Get pull is used frequently to synchronize your local workflow with the latest updates from the team. So here's a screenshot of a Get client cloning. It's a very intuitive interface. You can see that you're where you're getting, and you enter the URL, like whether it be GitLab or Bitbucket or something like that, and then there's a button that says clone. Pretty intuitive. Checking status and history. This is another workflow that's important. Again, that get status is my favorite. Before making changes, it's really important to see what's happening in your repository. So that get status sees which files you've changed locally and what needs to be staged and committed. Get diff, if you pull that command, you can view the changes that haven't been staged yet, and then get log will list all the commit history of the current branch. These commands help you understand your current workflow and the changes over time. But get status is definitely a winner for me. So staging and committing. Once you've made changes to your repository, you want to stage them and you want to commit them. So get add. When you hit get status, it will give you a list of files that you've changed. Say maybe you've worked on 3 files over time. Maybe you've worked on the README. Maybe you've worked on a YAML file. Well, get add, you can have the file name at the end of it to add a specific file. There is a trick if you want to add all of your files at once. It's get add period, but it's really suggested that you do it per file. Get commit -m is saving your staged files to your local repository, and that M flags that you're creating a message. So this message is important. Like, you know how when you like on your iPhone and they're like, oh, what just happened? And it says fixes bugs. And you're like, but that doesn't tell me anything. So this commit message is where you can tell people who are looking at your changes what exactly you did. Sometimes when you're working with a team, it's your ticket number. When you're doing a merge request with Drupal.org, typically you try to have the node number on there, and then what I updated X, Y, and Z file. So don't be lazy with your commit message, because there's nothing like, especially if you have to go and revert and you're like, made changes. You're like, well, I'm not sure which changes I made. So try to be specific with your dash M's. And then there's a shortcut where you can do get commit dash A dash M, which sends both of those together. Take my branch away. Berlin, yes. So branching. We don't want to make changes to the shared code base, so we create branches that mirror the code, and we work from there so we don't screw up anybody else's work. So get branch will list all of the branches in your repository. It'll list all of them, and I said it'll flag the one that you're on. If you want to go to a different branch than what you're on, you would do get checkout with the branch name. Say you want to create a new branch where you're on, so if you do get checkout dash B with the name of a branch, you create a branch and you switch to it in one step. Get branch D is where you delete a feature branch once you no longer need it. Maybe as a beginner you won't do that so often because you can make mistakes, but get branch will list all of them. Get checkout moves you over, and then get checkout dash B creates a new branch. So back to that client. Again, you can press a button and add a branch, and you can name it here, and then you can add a branch and switch to it. So that's what it looks like. That get checkout or get checkout dash B. It adds a branch and switches you to it. Push it real good. So pushing is where you start working remotely with others, when you have the changes that you want on your local machine and you want to share them with others. To do that, you have to push it upstream. So you want to make sure that your branch is ready. So this is I know I kind of iterate this. First, I would do get status because that is my favorite one and I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. But you would add all of those changes with get add. That way it adds them to staging. You do your get commit with your nice commit message. And then you want to be sure that if you're working on the same branch as someone else, if they've pushed before you've pushed your work, that creates some conflicts, which we're going to talk about. So before you actually push, you want to pull down just to make sure that there's been no changes made to that repository remote. And get pull again is that fetch and merge. I reference this command a lot. It's important to make sure that your work is current with others. Sometimes our communication is less than perfect. Sometimes we forget to hit send on a Slack message. Sometimes we forget to write in the ticket what we've done. So that get pull really helps to prevent things from happening later, conflicts, which I'll talk about in a few slides. And then get push when you're sure that you have everything that you need. It sends those changes to the main branch. And this is a snapshot of pushing from a client. Again, very intuitive. You can have a get pull and you have a sync and a push, so that's what it looks like, not on the command line. Like a merging, requesting for the very first time, like a merging. You can tell I'm a little bit of a Madonna fan when I was young. But before applying those outside changes, you want to get your own work in a place where you feel good, it's committed locally, and you don't want to clobber if there's conflicts. So bringing it all together. This is more than just pushing your code to a clean branch when you're caught up. It's, you know, I think when we get ready, close to feature releases, all of us are sort of frantically working on things at once. So you want to make sure that it's all together and merged. So get remote, this is the command to, you know, connect your repository to the remote server. Get pull, remember that command, it fetches and merges the request. And then get merge, this command merges the specified branch into your current branch. So you're able to like kind of blend your work together. And this is a snapshot from the get client of what merging looks like. You can see color coded if you can access visually. It's color coded what has changed, what needs to be merged, what files have been worked on. And you can really compare those two instances at once. And again, there's a button for merging. It does magic behind the scenes and it pulls the code together. While it can do some magic, it doesn't want to make assumptions if there's lots of conflict. This is a new one. Get me with your best shot, MROA. Sorry. So you're feeling confident that you want to share your changes. So we've been there. We've said this before. It'll just take a minute to clean up. Those are our famous last words, right? But this is when we start talking about merge conflicts. Even the most senior developers, this happens, conflicts happen. The most direct way to resolve a merge conflict is to edit the conflicted file. Again, there's that get status that I really like. It lists the files you've changed and it was still, if you still need to add or commit. There's that get diff again that shows the changes between the stages of the repository and the files. This is useful for predicting and preventing merge conflicts. Predicting is kind of a weird word, but get log merge, that will view all of the merge conflicts. It will list them on the command line. And then again, you know, if you're feeling confident, you can do that get push where it sends the changes to your remote branch. I got this. Pull it down before you go. Don't leave your teammates hanging solo. We were working on that because I didn't know the second line of that song by heart. So, okay. So, this is what we don't like to look at, right? I don't. I get scared. I'm like, ooh, no, someone else. So you can see there's 3 versions of the same code, and this is a comparison to each other. This is the time to review and check. There are really 2 things that you can do with this information. You can decide not to merge, or you can fix the conflicts. So, you know, this is like, maybe you're new, maybe there's something happening, maybe you're having a really bad day. Sometimes you just make the decision not to merge in your code. It's just really not playing nice together. Those yarns are in knots and maybe they're twisted up a couple times. It's a knot that you're not familiar with. So if we do get fetch origin, it fetches the latest history from the server and you can point your local main branch to it. You can do get reset in a commit hash. That undoes all the commits after a specified commit, and you can preserve the changes locally. And me, when I was an intern working in Drupal, sometimes I'm like, I can't do any of it. And I would do get reset hard, which kind of takes you back to that where you first started locally. It discards all the history, goes back to that specified commit. Doesn't entirely delete it, but they're orphaned. So they're just sort of off to the side. You can find it if you want. But yeah, gets reset hard was a big friend of mine when I first started working on the command line. And there are buttons to help you reset the things as well. Like I said, most of these things have the get client dashboards. There's a nuclear button, you push a button, but these get clients are really polite. they'll make sure that you really want to blow up your work before you do it. Because sometimes when you do it on your own, you just do it kind of that spontaneous impulse. So sometimes it's okay to use that client because they're just like, are you sure? And it will ask, some of them will ask you twice, are you really sure? Because this is what's going to happen. So sort of that nuclear part. Tag it good. So tagging is something we do in Drupal a lot. You know, we tag something when there's a release. It marks those specific points in your repository's history that are important. Again, usually for releases or features or milestones. They're what's the word I'm looking for? Commonly used to indicate versions. You know, when we tag our modules with the release, you know, or even Drupal core, you know, it's 8.1.2. Those tags are very common. It creates an immutable reference. Unlike branches, tags don't move. Once you tag a commit, it stays fixed. So you always know exactly what code it points to. So tagging a release, you know, we use a tag to mark a release in Get. To create a tag, we'll do get tag and the name of our version if we're doing a version. If you want to push it to your remote, it's get push, you know, with the flag tags. It takes it up to your remote server. Say you want to inspect your tags, see what commit the tag points to and its details. You can do get show with the version number. So you have get tag, get push, and get show. It really helps you track the important events in a project's life cycle, like releases, hot fixes, and experimental milestones. And here it is in the client. Again, really intuitive. You know, we're going to tag it, and then we're going to add a tag, and if you want to push, just hit that add tag and push. So you can see how those sort of line up together. I don't have too much more time. So when we talk about web-based version control, these are our platforms that we use, like GetBucket or Bitbucket, GitLab, and GitHub. And I'm an open source fan, so I don't recommend GitHub. I do recommend that everyone kind of pull off of that and do GitLab, because GitHub does track you and use your statistics, especially Copilot, but that's a whole nother talk. But these platforms provide us with a really rad visual interface that you can help change, that helps you manage and look at your version controls project locally. And it's a way to make your code public as well. You know, Drupal.org, we have everything on GitLab. It's a public repository that everyone can work in. So the workflow is much the same in the browser or the web-based solutions. You know, you create a branch. Your branch is like a sandbox where you can do all of your work. You can make those changes freely and without worrying about breaking the live version. We add our commits. Again, it's very similar. We commit often. That helps us, like with small changes. We don't want to do a huge commit at once, especially when working on a team, because if you mess up something, it takes a lot to unwind it. So, you know, we commit often. Each commit is that snapshot again, and it really helps organize, and it's easy to track over time. These interfaces keep revising and testing and pushing your updates up to the branch. Frequent commits and testing help ensure that your code works smoothly. Okay, so this is a mistake in my slide. The community doesn't necessarily call them pull requests anymore. We've moved away from that language because it used to be vendor specific. So the wording should be create a merge request, because a merge request goes across all of the platforms. So you create a merge request. Once your changes are ready, you create that merge request again. That used to be called a pull request. This invites others to review your work, and it starts that collaboration process. You know, your colleagues provide feedback, they ask questions, they suggest improvements to ensure the code is solid. All of this is happening on the web, so people can see that. You know, we have Drupal.org and GitLab that helps us see that. You can make comments, you can discuss and collaborate together. You can make adjustments. It's not always about writing code. It's about like working together. Like I said, you can make comments and suggestions versus just, working in the code. And then merging, after your merge request has been selected, the maintainers of the projects will merge it all together, and it'll create that bigger picture. And then it'll shift it into that main branch and then get committed to like, Drupal core or whatever module that you're working on. So this is a GitLab repository, just a sneak peek of what it looks like. It looks very much like GitHub. You've got your list of files. You can see who the maintainer is. It's got some buttons. So here's okay, this is not the right language either. It's supposed to say GitLab merge request. Sorry about that. So this is what a request looks like. You can view the code. Here's a message for collaboration. It doesn't always have to be a merge request with code. It can just be a comment. Again, there's one button that you push. It makes it really simple. You can write a commit message right there. So spinning up a local development environment. Does everyone work locally in some sort of local environment when they're in Drupal? Okay. So local environments. This is a local server. It's creating a web server on your website. Less about get, but more about testing and development. It provides a safe development environment for your local machine. It actually helps too, like when I was a mom who would have to sit at piano practice and stuff like that, I could work on my own machine and not have to worry about internet connection or affecting live users while I was doing it. It prevents accidentally having security issues or the need for constant file uploads. And when you work locally, it's easier to work and freely and experiment with your code because it doesn't impact people on the other side. So what are the requirements? Most of us know this, for WordPress or Drupal, you need a web server, a database, and PHP. You need a computer equipped with the task. More and more of our machines are becoming better equipped with the tasks. Even our iPads that are a little bit heavier can now run local development environments. So make sure that you just have enough RAM, that you have enough storage, and you do your research when selecting the device to use. So some local server setups, and I think I'm running low on time. A local server is essential for developers. You can have native installations. You can run directly on Linux or Mac OS or Windows. Anybody on Windows? So you need your virtual machines. Those are the self-contained servers that are running your OS. Docker environments, these are lightweight containers with fast setup times. You don't have to use Docker. You can use Kalima. You can use Rancher Desktop. So your options are a lot more local or a lot more varied than they were in previous years. But make sure that you choose the environment that best fits with your workflow, your team, and your project requirements. So why have a local server? And I don't think I have to make the case for this. Sometimes you don't always have access to your client server, so you have to work locally. If you're building a website and you don't have access to their files and things like that, you can have that on your local server. Again, it allows for better experimentation. You can tinker, you can make mistakes, you can go back. It's really provides that sandbox. Don't always need the internet. For me, when I first started, it was that stress-free space, and then I could tailor it to my computer's needs as well. So local web development environment. So these are the things that we're starting to work on in the collaboration space. Browser-based environments. Has anyone ever used like Getpod? Getpod was something that we were using recently in Drupal. No? Okay, so these are, modern-based or cloud environments that teams can work together in real time. So if I'm working on code, Chris can be working on code at the same time, and we can see it because it's browser-based. You can use VS Code. You can use other IDEs. These environments are highly customizable. You can tailor your setup. One that we're working with in the mentoring and collaboration space on Contrib Day is Drupal Forge. We were using GetPod, or DrupalPod that ran off GetPod, but they decided they weren't going to let us use that for free anymore. It's no longer open source. So Drupal Forge, it sets up a ready-to-use Drupal site right for you. There's a push of a button. It spins up. You can do experimentation. Each setup is based on a template. You just fill in a few details, and then it'll link to your site, and then I can share it with you, and we can work on it together. Tugboat, this is a good for QA sort of work. It creates automatic merge request previews. I think that the Drupal UI on Drupal.org, when we work on it, is still like Tugboat based. It integrates with GitLab and Bitbucket as well. Simply Test Me, we were real strong in the community a few years ago. It kind of went stale the last few years, but recently we've made some really good updates on Simply Test Me. It helps you to helps you to work on a Drupal module, theme, or distribution. You can test drive a distribution. You go to Simply Test Me. It asks you what version you want, what version of Drupal. You can put in the module you want, and then you can play around with the module in real time. You can share the URL with someone, but they can't do the code with you. Where Drupal Forge, you can work on the code together. Simply Test Me, you can set up a little Drupal site and share it with a client, but they won't be able to interact with it, but a good alternative. And I am exactly at time, so thank you. I really appreciate it. And then it links to a QR code, and with the QR code comes some really good links on Get, and then on those local environments. Oh, I didn't include DDev. DDev is I'm not paid by anybody. There's a few different local environments that you can use, but DDev has sort of become the standard. But there's Lando, there's Doxel, there's Flight 10, there's all sorts of different ones, but DDev has really become that standard in Drupal development. Thank you. Any questions?
If you start locally a website or something, what is the difference to initially push it to a remote server or clone it? Or should I clone it then? Or?
If it's a repository that already exists?
No, actually, if I would start really a new website on my local device, and then I want to go online basically, should I clone it or?
No, so what you would do is you would initialize it, do a get init, and then push it up to your domain. Right? Cloning is when something already exists up here and you're pulling it down. You can clone it, I guess, to fork it.
Because if I would really work with all the content locally,
so that's like pushing your database too, right?
Yeah, everything. I could then get it really ready as the way as I want it, and then.
Well, so config and content are two different things, though. It's really hard to push that content, the database. So you might need a staging area.
Export, no?
Yeah. You can drop the database and add it, but I don't think that you can push content. It's more like the code.
Yeah. So I would not clone it.
Right.
Cloning just for things that are already there.
Yeah. It's either for pulling it down, or if you want to split it, you can clone it. If you want to fork a different way and work it on two different ways. Okay. Yeah.